Welcome back to the channel, where we dive into the extraordinary. The year is 2026, and the world is shifted, yet 7 familiar faces aren't just returning, they are absolutely dominating. We witnessed their musical empire, but did you ever expect them to conquer spaces far beyond the stage? How does a group become a global superpower, shaping culture, technology, and diplomacy? What secret moves were they plotting behind closed doors while we streamed their hits? Are you ready to uncover the blueprint of their ultimate takeover? Strap in, because we are revealing not ordinary people. 7 ways BTS will rule the world in 2026.
Number 7. RM, the architect of global minds. Have you ever stopped to think about what happens when a certified genius decides that dominating the Billboard charts simply isn't enough to satisfy his hunger for changing the world? Welcome to the astonishing reality of Kim Namjoon, known to the masses as RM, the indestructible leader of BTS, who in 2026 has completely redefined the boundaries between a global pop icon, a high-ranking cultural diplomat, and an elite art philanthropist. Imagine this. A boy from Ilsan with an IQ of 148 who once spit raw, aggressive, underground hip-hop verses under the moniker Runch Randa is now sitting at the head of international diplomatic summits, not just as an entertainer, but as a legitimate, formidable geopolitical voice. How did we get from a sweaty, cramped practice room in Seoul to the hallowed halls of the United Nations and the White House? The groundwork was laid years ago, but 2026 is the year RM's ultimate master plan comes to full, magnificent fruition. We all remember the goosebumps that erupted on our skin during his historic Speak Yourself speech at the UN General Assembly, where his trembling hands held a script that urged millions of youth to find their name and find their voice. We remember the immense gravity of his presence in the Oval Office, addressing anti-Asian hate crimes with an eloquence and grace that left seasoned politicians utterly speechless. But what exactly was he plotting during his mandatory military service? While the world simply thought he was fulfilling his civic duty to South Korea, Namjoon was reflecting in silence, reading voraciously, and synthesizing a master blueprint for a global cultural renaissance. Fast forward to 2026, RM isn't merely releasing chart-topping solo albums that bend genres and shatter records. He is spearheading a massive, multinational foundation dedicated entirely to youth mental health and global art preservation. Have you ever noticed how whatever obscure museum Namjoon visits instantly sells out of tickets, sparking a worldwide phenomenon coined the RM Art Tours? This wasn't just a rich man's hobby. It was a calculated, deliberate cultural education for his millions of followers. By 2026, his quiet influence has morphed into unprecedented institutional power. He has become the undisputed kingmaker of the international art world, bridging the gap between historically forgotten Korean modernists like Yoon Hyung-kun and Western contemporary masters, curating global exhibitions that fundamentally challenge how we perceive identity, trauma, and history. Let's dive deeper into the sheer scale of his artistic monopoly. We are talking about a man who in his late 20s was already donating hundreds of millions of won to the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art to restore out-of-print art books, quietly seeding an intellectual revolution. By 2026, this passion has erupted into a multi-billion-dollar initiative funded by his relentless solo successes, which single-handedly rescues struggling art and humanities programs in public schools across the globe. Imagine the sheer poetic justice of this scenario. A hip-hop artist from a once underdog agency in South Korea is now practically deciding the syllabus for arts education in elite European and American institutions. He writes devastatingly beautiful lyrics about the ephemeral nature of cherry blossoms and the crushing, suffocating loneliness of a crowded city, and then smoothly walks into a high-stakes boardroom to negotiate the repatriation of stolen historical artifacts back to their home countries. The duality is absolutely mesmerizing. Furthermore, deeply reflect on the profound psychological toll and the magnificent resilience of his decade-long journey. From facing brutal, unforgiving criticism in the underground hip-hop scene for selling out as an idol, to being mocked and marginalized by Western media before they realized his unparalleled genius, RM absorbed every single ounce of that negativity and transmuted it into pure, unadulterated wisdom. When he speaks, he doesn't just recite PR-approved plastic talking points. He bleeds his authentic lived experiences directly into the microphone. In 2026, his highly anticipated podcast, which brilliantly explores the intersection of ancient philosophy, modern art, and Gen Z mental health, has become the most listened to audio program on the planet, effortlessly surpassing veteran broadcasters. He interviews Nobel laureates, avant-garde painters, and struggling teenagers with the exact same level of profound respect and insatiable curiosity. How many artists can strip away the blinding, glamorous facade of mega superstardom to sit in the dirt and dig for the absolute truth of human existence? He has essentially rewired the aspirations of an entire global generation. They don't just want to be famous anymore. Because of RM, they want to be profound. They want to be highly educated, and they desperately want to leave a lasting, positive scar on the earth. He was the heavy anchor that kept BTS from floating away into the toxic, disorienting stratosphere of absolute fame, and now he serves as the intellectual anchor for a world desperately seeking authentic, transparent leadership. The way he manipulates language, weaving intricate, mind-bending wordplay in both Korean and English, translates seamlessly to how he masterfully navigates international diplomacy. He fundamentally understands that true, lasting power doesn't come from volume or force, but from deep emotional resonance. By 2026, when world leaders are scratching their heads, struggling to connect with the disillusioned younger generations, who do you honestly think they call? They call Kim Namjoon. He holds the master key to the hearts and minds of millions, not through cheap manipulation, but through raw, unfiltered sincerity. Are you beginning to truly see the terrifyingly beautiful magnitude of his influence? How does one man expertly balance the chaotic, deafening energy of the mainstream music industry with the quiet, profound stillness required to change global cultural policies? This is the eternal paradox of RM, a leader who doesn't just command a massive fandom, but is actively, purposefully scripting the intellectual and cultural trajectory of the entire decade. And if this is what the visionary leader is doing on the global stage, can you even begin to imagine what extraordinary chaos and dominance the other members have unleashed upon the world? The dominoes are rapidly falling, the global paradigm is violently shifting, and RM is the mastermind architect silently moving the pieces on a geopolitical chessboard we didn't even know existed. But hold your breath and brace yourselves, because if Namjoon is the brilliant mind conquering the intellectual and diplomatic spheres, just wait until you see who is completely revolutionizing the very fabric of the global fashion and luxury economy, making billionaire CEOs literally beg for a single fleeting nod of approval. You absolutely won't believe who is shaking up the system next, but right now, take a deep breath and absorb the staggering, undeniable reality of RM's 2026 global dominance.
Number 6. V. The Emperor of Global Luxury. Have you ever witnessed a singular human being effortlessly dictate the staggering multi-billion-dollar fluctuations of the global luxury economy with nothing more than a fleeting, enigmatic smile and a blurry photograph? Welcome to the absolutely breathtaking, unparalleled reality of Kim Tae-young in 2026, the man the world knows as V, who has entirely rewritten the archaic rules of fashion, visual arts, and high-end economics. Let us take a step back and truly analyze the terrifyingly beautiful trajectory of the boy from Daegu who harbored a secret, devastating weapon, a soul-piercing, asymmetrical gaze, and a mesmerizingly deep, velvety baritone voice that sounds precisely like aged whiskey poured over crushed velvet in a smoky, underground 1950s jazz club. Do you remember the absolute, unadulterated chaos that erupted on the pristine streets of Paris during the Celine Summer 2023 menswear show? The sheer, deafening magnitude of the crowd that gathered just to catch a 2-second glimpse of him in a crimson leather jacket was so astronomically massive that it reportedly left even Bernard Arnault, the wealthiest man on the planet and CEO of LVMH, staring out from the balcony in stunned, bewildered disbelief. We all intimately know about the legendary Midas touch, or the V effect, a terrifyingly consistent economic phenomenon where absolutely anything he touches, wears, or even casually glances at, from an obscure $2 lip balm to a meticulously crafted $10,000 bespoke designer suit, instantly evaporates from global inventory within mere seconds, crashing corporate websites and sending panicked marketing executives into overdrive. But what exactly was brewing beneath the surface of this devastatingly handsome face while the world was merely obsessed with his visuals? While he was serving his mandatory military duty in the elite, immensely grueling Special Duty Team SDT anti-terrorism unit, Tae-young was unknowingly cementing the ultimate, most intoxicating duality known to pop culture. Imagine the sheer, visceral shock of the global public witnessing the man officially crowned the most beautiful face in the world, suddenly donning heavy black tactical gear, wielding assault rifles and rappelling down buildings with the lethal, calculating precision of an action movie protagonist. This stark, gritty, hyper-masculine reality violently collided with his ethereal, high-fashion persona, forging an aura in 2026 that is completely untouchable, dangerously magnetic, and universally revered. Fast forward to this present moment in 2026, Tae-young is no longer just a passive muse or a heavily compensated global ambassador desperately courted by legacy houses like Cartier and Celine. He has completely transcended the role of a model to become a sovereign dictator of global aesthetics. Have you noticed how the very fabric of high fashion has dramatically shifted away from loud, obnoxious logos towards a quiet, romantic, deeply nostalgic elegance? That is the direct, unadulterated consequence of Tae-young's terrifyingly vast influence. In 2026, he isn't just wearing the clothes, he is sitting at the very head of the boardroom tables in Paris and Milan, operating as an elite creative director and a major shareholder, launching his own fiercely independent, globally dominating lifestyle and luxury syndicate that masterfully blends the melancholic, vintage aesthetic of his beloved jazz legends like Bing Crosby and Chet Baker with cutting-edge, sustainable modern architecture. He has fundamentally weaponized his alter ego, Vante, transforming his once private, quiet passion for vintage film photography and classical art into a colossal, international multimedia empire.
His critically acclaimed exhibitions, which seamlessly fuse deeply intimate monochromatic street photography with immersive sensory jazz experiences, have completely revolutionized the stagnant traditional gallery model, drawing intellectual elites, desperate hype beasts, and hardcore fans into the exact same room. Furthermore, let us plunge deeply into the immense, almost suffocating psychological weight of being the world's ultimate visual obsession. How does a naturally eccentric, deeply sensitive soul, who once confessed to feeling like an inner child wandering lost in a vast, terrifying galaxy, manage to ground himself while being constantly scrutinized by billions of ravenous eyes? The answer lies in his profound, unwavering commitment to authentic, unfiltered artistry. In 2026, his musical output has completely abandoned the restrictive, algorithmic formulas of mainstream pop. Following the massive, slow-burn success of his debut album, Layover, Taehyung has carved out a totally unique, untouchable niche in the global music industry, releasing sweeping, cinematic, neo-soul and jazz fusion masterpieces that have utterly dominated the Grammy nominations, proving to the snobby, gatekeeping Western critics that his profound musicality is just as dangerously potent as his face. He is currently starring in an intensely dark, psychologically complex, Palme d'Or-winning independent film at the Cannes Film Festival, entirely shedding his glamorous idol image to deliver a raw, visceral, Oscar-worthy acting performance that has left veteran Hollywood directors literally begging for his schedule. The economic term V-nomics is now a legitimate, rigorously studied subject in elite Ivy League business schools, analyzing how one man's authentic, unforced personal taste can unilaterally dictate global supply chains and shift the stock prices of massive European conglomerates. He has created a terrifyingly beautiful world where classical romance, vintage nostalgia, and modern luxury are inextricably linked to his very existence. Every single post, every cryptic Instagram story, every carefully curated silhouette he presents to the world is a masterclass in psychological manipulation and aesthetic supremacy. He doesn't chase trends, he violently, effortlessly creates them, leaving a desperate, panting fashion industry constantly scrambling to copy his shadow. Are you beginning to grasp the sheer, intoxicating magnitude of his reign? How does someone perfectly balance the grueling blood, sweat, and tears legacy of a hip-hop idol with the refined, sophisticated elegance of a global luxury emperor? This is the breathtaking paradox of V, a man who silently commands the visual and economic desires of the entire planet without ever having to raise his voice. But brace yourselves, hold on to your seats, and deeply question everything you know about the global music industry, because if V is the emperor casually conquering the high fashion boardrooms and the silver screen, just wait until you see who has completely hijacked the underground, violently dismantled the very concept of genre, and built an impenetrable, terrifyingly powerful production empire from the shadows. You won't believe the absolute carnage the next member has unleashed upon the world of music production. But right now, take a deep breath and let the terrifyingly gorgeous reality of V's 2026 luxury dominance wash over you.
Number 5. Suga, the phantom architect of sound. Start with his origins. Picture the freezing, mold-infested underground basement in Daegu. Imagine a young, fiercely determined kid selling meticulously crafted beats for a measly 5,000 won, barely $4, just to afford a single cheap bowl of jjajangmyeon, agonizing over the daily, crushing choice between taking the bus home or eating a meal to survive. Recall the terrifying reality of his delivery accident, the sickening crunch of metal against bone that shattered his shoulder, hiding the excruciating agony from his company because he was absolutely petrified of being tossed out of the debut lineup after sacrificing his youth, his family's approval, and his mental stability. He popped dangerous amounts of painkillers in secret just to endure the intensely brutal, bone-breaking choreographies of danger and blood, sweat, and tears, all while a torn labrum silently screamed inside his body. This immense, suffocating physical and psychological trauma didn't break him. Instead, it birthed the devastatingly brilliant, raw psychological masterpiece that is his alter ego, August D. Think about the visceral, unfiltered, and deeply uncomfortable rage of his early mixtapes, the sheer bleeding desperation that soaked through every single syllable of tracks like The Last, where he aggressively and openly confronted his severe social anxiety, his paralyzing depression, and the terrifying, suffocating pressures of their sudden, blinding global fame. He didn't just write rap songs, he performed literal open-heart surgery on himself in front of millions of people. Think about Amygdala, where he intentionally locked himself inside the darkest, most traumatic memories of his life, his mother's terrifying heart surgery, his father's devastating cancer diagnosis, his own near-fatal accident, and miraculously turned that agonizing mental prison into an ultimate anthem of profound, tear-jerking healing for millions of broken youth across the globe. He bled out on the stage every single night during his legendary monumental D-Day solo world tour in 2023, effectively hosting a magnificent, fiery funeral for his agonizing past and emerging from the ashes as a fully realized, completely indestructible titan. Now, violently pivot your minds to the staggering reality of 2026. The burning, uncontrollable rage has entirely metamorphosed into a cold, calculated, and totally untouchable institutional power. Min Yoongi, Suga, August D, the holy trinity of modern musical genius, has completely and ruthlessly dismantled the traditional, exploitative, factory-like model of the global music industry. He is no longer just a rapper or a producer. He is a monopolistic, omnipotent titan of sound. During his alternative military service, working quietly and diligently in the public sector, he intimately witnessed the raw, unfiltered, heartbreaking struggles of everyday marginalized people, absorbing these profound, quiet human tragedies and transmuting them into the most devastatingly beautiful, complex orchestral arrangements the world has ever witnessed. By 2026, he has officially launched his own shadowy, elite, multi-billion-dollar production syndicate, a massive, impenetrable fortress of pure artistic integrity that fundamentally and aggressively rejects the algorithmic, soulless, TikTok-chasing, fast food music culture that plagues the modern charts. He sits calmly in his meticulously designed, acoustically perfect spaceship-like studio, Genius Lab 3.0, surrounded by extremely rare vintage synthesizers and multi-million-dollar mixing boards, effortlessly pulling the strings of the global Billboard charts like a terrifyingly calm puppet master. Have you sharply noticed how the biggest, most critically acclaimed global pop anthems, the hauntingly atmospheric soundtracks of heavily decorated, Oscar-winning dystopian sci-fi epics, and the gritty, underground hip-hop revivals sweeping across America all share a distinct, razor-sharp, melancholic edge? Look incredibly closely at the dizzying fine print of the credits. You will inevitably see his name or hear his iconic whispered producer tag silently dominating the industry. He has seamlessly merged the haunting, delicate, deeply emotional genius of his late beloved mentor, the legendary Ryuichi Sakamoto, with the aggressive, booming, earth-shattering 808s of Atlanta trap music, single-handedly creating an entirely new, unnamed, revolutionary genre that desperate, gatekeeping Western music critics are absolutely scrambling to categorize. He is composing the harrowing, cinematic, emotional scores for billion-dollar Hollywood film franchises. And picture this breathtaking scenario. He is standing triumphantly on the prestigious stage of the Academy Awards, not just as a global K-pop superstar, but as a legendary, universally respected film composer receiving his Oscar. He's dressed impeccably in a custom jet-black Valentino suit, his long hair tied back, thanking his 6 brothers in fluent, gravelly, deeply resonant Korean, while the entirety of the Hollywood elite gives him a tearful, thunderous, minutes-long standing ovation. Furthermore, let us plunge deeply into the sheer economic devastation and absolute revolution he has inflicted upon legacy record labels. He has single-handedly pioneered and violently enforced a revolutionary, artist-first, transparent, blockchain-based royalty distribution system that permanently guarantees young, struggling, desperate underground producers in Seoul, Atlanta, London, and Tokyo actually get paid their absolute worth, effectively and ruthlessly destroying the parasitic middlemen and greedy executives of the industry. He distinctly and painfully remembers exactly what it felt like to be ripped off and scammed as a hungry, desperate teenager in Daegu, and he has fully weaponized his colossal billionaire status to ensure that no true, authentic artist ever has to starve for their art again. He has aggressively bought up massive abandoned industrial warehouses across South Korea and creatively transformed them into ultra-modern, fully equipped, free-to-use creative sanctuaries for independent, unsigned musicians, completely bypassing the massive corporate gatekeepers who once rejected him. He always poetically compared their agonizing journey to a beautiful lotus flower blooming gracefully in the thick, suffocating mud. Well, in 2026, he isn't just a flower anymore. He is cultivating and fiercely protecting an entire global garden of lotus flowers. He has aggressively funded massive anonymous mental health clinics specifically tailored for struggling entertainers, bravely breaking the notoriously toxic, deadly, and silent taboo of depression within the fiercely competitive Asian entertainment industry. The duality of this man is utterly terrifying and profoundly beautifully intoxicating. He is the ruthless, unyielding, cold-blooded businessman who can casually negotiate a 9-figure multinational licensing deal with a global streaming giant without breaking a single sweat or raising his voice. And yet, he is the exact same gentle, deeply introverted soul who meticulously studies acoustic guitar for hundreds of hours just to play a soothing, melancholic, tear-inducing lullaby for a weeping fan in a stadium of 80,000 screaming people. He famously, heartbreakingly cried in the shower for their very first major American Music Awards performance because the sheer, crushing terror of what they had just achieved finally hit his fragile shoulders. But in 2026, he absolutely does not cry from fear. He literally orchestrates the fear. He dictates the cultural temperature of the planet. What started as a casual, intimate YouTube series where he drank highball with his members, Suchiwada, has miraculously transformed into the most highly respected, brutally honest, psychological inner roundtable on the planet. Elite Hollywood directors, legendary Western rock stars, and reclusive literary giants now desperately beg their publicist for a coveted guest spot at Yoongi's table just to pour out a glass of premium whiskey and undergo his intense, penetrating, psychoanalytical style of interviewing. He effortlessly disarms the most powerful, heavily guarded people in the world with his quiet, raspy cuckle and his deeply empathetic, knowing gaze, stripping away their PR-manufactured plastic facades to reveal their raw, bleeding, unedited humanity. He has completely obliterated the restrictive, archaic boundaries between K-pop, Western hip-hop, classical orchestration, and alternative rock, definitively proving to the universe that a quiet kid with a shattered shoulder and a desperate dream could literally reshape the entire sonic architecture of the modern world. When Min Yoongi takes a slow, deliberate breath before spitting a verse, the entire global music industry holds its collective breath in pure, unadulterated terror and absolute awe. How does a man who once deeply hated the blinding spotlight now so comfortably and absolutely control the entire global grid? The answer is brutally simple and profoundly romantic. He realized that to permanently protect his peace, his sanctuary, and his family, his 6 beloved brothers, he had to completely own the very ground they walked on. He bought the buildings, he bought the servers, he mastered the code, and he conquered the system from the inside out. He is the ultimate quiet storm, the phantom architect who flawlessly rebuilt the entire music world in his own image, completely, ruthlessly, and beautifully on his.
Number 4. Jin, the silver screen mogul and traditional tycoon. Let us completely shatter the grand, glittering illusion that Kim Seok-jin, universally known as worldwide handsome, is merely the comedic relief, the resident gamer, or the designated visual of the world's biggest musical act, because the reality of his 2026 domination is so masterfully calculated and terrifyingly brilliant that it belongs in a textbook for global business and cinematic arts. Cast your mind back to the very beginning, to the boy who didn't even want to be a singer, who was literally chased down the street by a casting director simply because his face was a mathematically perfect masterpiece. He originally enrolled in the highly prestigious Jungkook University, entirely focused on becoming a serious, respected actor. Yet he sacrificed his deeply held personal dreams, completely altering his life's trajectory to carry the unimaginable vocal and emotional weight of BTS. Do you remember the agonizing, blood-sweating hours he spent alone in the practice room, desperately trying to catch up to the natural dance prodigies in his group, crying in absolute secret because he felt he was holding them back? He flawlessly masked his blistering insecurities and terrifying physical exhaustion behind a barrage of flying kisses and iconic dad jokes, becoming the unbreakable, fiercely protective older brother who held the psychological foundation of the group together when the immense pressure of global fame threatened to crush them all. Do you recall the breathtaking, tear-inducing spectacle in Buenos Aires where he debuted the astronaut alongside Coldplay, running across that massive stadium stage into the arms of Chris Martin? That wasn't just a farewell song before his military enlistment. It was a profound, cosmic declaration of his eternal bond with his fans and a massive, undeniable flex of his stadium rock vocal capabilities. The sheer, soaring power of his silver voice, capable of piercing through the heaviest, most emotionally devastating high notes with crystal clear precision, was completely ignored by early critics who foolishly boxed him in. But he didn't complain, he just worked harder, taking secret vocal lessons late into the night, pushing his physical limits until his vocal cords bled, transforming himself into one of the most stable, breathtaking live vocalists in the entire global industry. He was the first one to bravely step into the harsh, freezing reality of the South Korean military in late 2022, carrying the crushing weight of the world's expectations on his broad shoulders as a frontline assistant drill instructor. But what the public completely failed to realize was that while he was shouting commands in the freezing mud of Yeoncheon, his brilliant, razor-sharp mind was already plotting a multi-billion-dollar post-military empire. Fast forward to 2026, and the man who once nervously sang Awake, begging to just hold the petals of the flower, has completely devoured the entire garden. Upon his triumphant return, Jin completely bypassed the expected traditional route of simply releasing a safe pop album. Instead, he violently shook the foundations of the Korean entertainment industry by simultaneously conquering the absolute pinnacles of unscripted television, A-list cinema, and high-end traditional commerce. Let us first address the absolute cinematic monopoly he has established. We all knew he had the acting degree, but nobody was prepared for the sheer, devastating emotional depth he unleashed when he finally stepped onto the silver screen. In 2026, Jin is not just starring in romantic comedies, he has brutally shattered his pristine idol image by taking on a harrowing, psychologically complex leading role in a dark, gritty, multi-million-dollar psychological thriller directed by a legendary auteur, completely sweeping the Asian Film Awards and generating massive, undeniable Oscar buzz. The critics who once dismissively labeled him as just a pretty face are now furiously writing thousands of words, analyzing the terrifyingly subtle micro-expressions and the sheer, raw, unadulterated trauma he portrays on screen. He has seamlessly transitioned from selling out 80,000-seat stadiums to commanding the absolute pin-drop silence of global cinema houses, proving that his emotional intelligence is just as lethal as his vocal range. But the true, absolute masterstroke of his 2026 global takeover isn't just in front of the camera. It is his shocking, unprecedented dominance in the global food and beverage industry. Remember his humble, deeply passionate journey into learning the ancient, dying art of traditional Korean alcohol brewing with the legendary chef Bak Jang-won? What started as a wholesome, charming YouTube series has spectacularly evolved into a premium, hyper-luxurious global brand. By 2026, his exclusive line of traditionally brewed, high-end Korean liquor has completely disrupted the Western-dominated luxury alcohol market. We are talking about intricately designed, limited-edition bottles that sell out in mere nanoseconds, violently crashing international servers and being proudly displayed in Michelin-starred restaurants from Paris to New York as the ultimate symbol of elite sophistication. He has single-handedly revived a forgotten cultural heritage, injecting billions of won into rural Korean farming communities and establishing himself as a highly respected, immensely powerful cultural ambassador and tycoon. Furthermore, he hasn't just abandoned his gamer roots, he has completely weaponized them. By 2026, his long-standing love of gaming has evolved into an official, massive esports ownership. He is the majority stakeholder in the world's most dominant esports syndicate, aggressively reshaping the notoriously toxic gaming industry into a healthy, highly regulated, and immensely profitable athletic enterprise. He is sitting in the VIP box at the World Championships, not as a guest, but as the owner of the winning team, wearing a perfectly tailored suit while aggressively screaming and cheering just like he did in his cramped dorm room 10 years ago. How does a man successfully operate a massive, intimidating global business empire and star in heavy, traumatic cinematic masterpieces while simultaneously remaining the most universally beloved, chaotic, and aggressively hilarious figure on global television? In 2026, his self-produced, massively budgeted variety show has effectively replaced legacy broadcasting, drawing higher viewership numbers than major sporting events. He invites the most intimidating, heavily guarded global celebrities, Hollywood A-listers, reclusive billionaires, and stoic politicians, and completely, effortlessly disarms them by forcing them to play ridiculous, childish games or cook meals in the absolute middle of nowhere. He strips away their PR manufactured armor with his infectious windshield wiper laugh and his totally unapologetic brazen confidence, revealing their raw, authentic humanity to the world. He has weaponized his humor, transforming it from a simple coping mechanism into the ultimate diplomatic tool, bridging immense cultural divides and making the entire planet fall helplessly in love with him. He fundamentally understands that in a world deeply traumatized by economic instability and constant anxiety, pure, unadulterated joy is the most valuable and powerful currency on earth. He doesn't just entertain, he heals.
He famously declared in his solo masterpiece, Epiphany, that he is the one he should love in this world, and by fully, fearlessly embracing every single complex, contradictory facet of his identity, he has subconsciously taught an entire global generation how to fiercely love themselves without apology or compromise. He is the brilliant, untouchable CEO who can casually finalize a massive international distribution deal in the morning, deliver a gut-wrenching, critically acclaimed acting performance in the afternoon, and then aggressively argue with a teenager on a video stream at midnight. He has completely obliterated the rigid, suffocating boundaries of what a global superstar is allowed to be. He took the suffocating, unbearable pressure of being the eldest member of the biggest group in history and effortlessly forged it into an impenetrable suit of armor. When Kim Seok-jin looks into the camera in 2026, he isn't just throwing a flying kiss, he is throwing a triumphant, unassailable declaration of total, absolute victory over every single person who ever dared to underestimate his genius. He is the ultimate silver screen mogul, the traditional tycoon, and the undeniable, undisputed king of global entertainment, ruling his massive, ever-expanding empire with a breathtakingly handsome face and an absolutely terrifying, unparalleled intellect. But hold your ground, because if Jin is dominating the screens and boardrooms, who is literally bending the laws of physical motion and redefining the absolute peak of human performance on the global stage?
Number 3. J-Hope, the sovereign of kinetic art and global standard. To truly comprehend the terrifying magnitude of Jungkook's absolute dominion in 2026, we have to travel back to the gritty, unforgiving underground dance battles of Gwangju, long before the blinding lights of stadiums and the deafening screams of millions. Imagine a young, desperately passionate kid, known then as Smile Hoya, whose entire skeletal structure seemed to dissolve the moment a heavy bass line dropped, moving with a fluid, terrifying precision that left veteran street dancers utterly speechless. He wasn't just a dancer, he was a kinetic prodigy who understood rhythm on a visceral, almost molecular level. When he made the life-altering decision to join Big Hit, he sacrificed the guaranteed respect of the underground scene to master an entirely new discipline, literally swallowing his pride to become the dance team leader, a title that carries an almost mythical, terrifying weight within the BTS lore. Do you recall the grueling behind-the-scenes footage of their early years, where drenched in sweat J-Hope would relentlessly drill the same intricate choreography for 12 hours straight, staring into the practice room mirror with a gaze so intense, so frighteningly demanding that even the natural-born dancers in the group would tremble? He became the physical conscience of BTS, the uncompromising guardian of their synchronization, turning blood, sweat, and agonizing tears into a visual weapon that conquered the world. We all vividly remember the sheer iconic shockwave of his performance at Lollapalooza in 2022, the first South Korean artist to ever headline a major American festival, where he single-handedly commanded a sea of over 100,000 screaming fans, transforming Chicago's Grant Park into Hopi-Palooza. That historic moment wasn't just a solo stage, it was a devastating declaration that J-Hope possessed the raw, unfiltered star power to dominate the biggest Western stages entirely on his own terms. But what exactly was brewing in his brilliant, perfectionist mind during his highly decorated, exemplary military service, where he served with distinction as a drill instructor? While the public merely celebrated his discharge, J-Hope was plotting the ultimate conceptual and physical evolution. In 2026, the man formerly known as the hope of the group has completely metamorphosed into the absolute sovereign of global performance and human kinetics. Let us analyze the sheer, unadulterated complexity of his Hope on the Street global movement, which in 2026 has completely devoured the archaic boundaries of the dance industry.
He has single-handedly elevated street dance, popping, locking, house, hip-hop from a subculture to a highly respected, globally recognized fine art form on par with classical ballet or avant-garde theater. Think about this massive conceptual shift. His critically acclaimed multidisciplinary visual masterpieces performed in prestigious global amphitheaters and modern art museums from Sydney to Copenhagen defy the known laws of physics. Music critics are literally losing their minds, frantically coining new terminology like kinetic storytelling to describe how J-Hope can convey complex, deep-seated societal struggles, psychological traumas, and ultimate blinding hope solely through the nuanced tension of a single muscle fiber in his shoulder or the terrifyingly precise arch of his spine. The dancers around the world, from local community centers to elite academies, are now judged by the Hosak standard, a devastating combination of raw street authenticity and flawless high art synchronization. Furthermore, let us plunge deeply into the profound emotional juxtaposition of his personal narrative and economic power. How does a man who carries the crushing responsibility of being the sunshine for millions manage the terrifying obsidian darkness of his intense perfectionism? The answer lies in his artistic expression. He has weaponized his public persona, transforming the expectation of happiness into a nuanced exploration of the human condition. His highly anticipated 2026 magnum opus album, a conceptual successor to the raw, visceral rage of Jack in the Box, masterfully weaves melancholic, socially conscious storytelling about fame, duty, and mortality with the most complex, ear-splittingly infectious dance-pop arrangements the world has ever heard. Deeply reflect on this poetic paradox. He is the highest-paid performance artist on the entire planet, with custom, luxury fashion endorsements that treat his body as a priceless living canvas. Yet, he is the exact same humble, grounded soul who spends his billions funding massive, free-to-use, state-of-the-art dance academies in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods across the globe, especially in his beloved hometown of Gwangju. He has created a concrete, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure that allows the next generation of underrated kids to hone their kinetic craft without having to starve or beg for opportunities, effectively bypassing the exploitative corporate entertainment factories. He is the brilliant, strategic CEO who can negotiate a massive global apparel deal that funds hundreds of community projects. And yet, he is the exact same intense artist who will spend 14 hours alone in a studio revising a single choreographic transition because he feels the emotional intention isn't 100% authentic. He has completely rewritten the playbook on what a global performer can be, proving the dance isn't just a rhythmic movement, it is a universal language, a tool for radical societal change, and a direct vessel for raw, unfiltered human emotion. When Jungkook stands center stage in 2026, bathed in a sea of green light, the entire world isn't just watching a performance, they are bearing witness to the absolute standard of human kinetic capability, being drawn helplessly into a vortex of blinding, unshakable hope that he fought through actual darkness to build for them. He is the undisputed sovereign of kinetic art, the choreographer of global change, and the unbreakable kinetic heart of the 21st century's biggest phenomenon. Are you beginning to feel the overwhelming physical gravity of his influence? How does a performance this massive, this physically and emotionally demanding, manage to keep a group grounded while they collectively rewrite global history? This is the paradox of J-Hope, a man whose infectious smile masks a dedication that can shift tectonic plates. But hold your breath and prepare for the most emotionally destabilizing, profoundly spiritual transition. Because if J-Hope is dominating the global grid with pure kinetic power and standard setting, who is literally bending the very definition of modern masculinity, redefining the boundary between human and divine artistry, and single-handedly reshaping the aesthetic standard of the entire planet?
You absolutely won't believe who is captivating the world next with a power so fragile, so intoxicating, it has the global fashion, visual art, and vocal worlds completely bringing them to their knees. But right now, take a deep breath and let the terrifyingly bright kinetic reality of J-Hope's 2026 reign settle into your bones.
Number 2. Jimin, the ethereal muse of global art. Let us completely shatter the fragile, superficial illusion that Park Jimin is merely the delicate lead vocalist or the graceful performer of a massive pop group, because the terrifyingly gorgeous reality of his 2026 global domination is so profoundly artistic and culturally revolutionary that it is fundamentally rewriting the very DNA of modern beauty and performance art. To truly comprehend the staggering, breathless magnitude of his current reign, we must violently throw ourselves back to the grueling, hyper-competitive halls of the Busan High School of Arts, where a young, fiercely driven prodigy completely obliterated expectations by becoming the top student in the modern dance department, a historically unprecedented feat for a male student. Do you remember the sheer, agonizing desperation of his early trainee days? The heartbreaking reality of a kid who slept barely 3 hours a night in a cramped, suffocating practice room in Seoul, relentlessly drilling his body until his muscles screamed in agony, surviving on a single meal a day because he was absolutely petrified of not fitting the harsh, unforgiving visual standards of the ruthless idol industry. He was the very last member to join BTS, constantly teetering on the terrifying edge of being cut from the debut lineup, carrying a crushing, suffocating mountain of insecurity and severe imposter syndrome. He practically tortured himself to achieve absolute perfection, masking his bleeding psychological wounds behind a blinding, angelic smile and a high-pitched, infectious laugh that fooled the world. Think about the visceral, haunting masterpiece that is his solo track Lie, where he desperately, aggressively sang about being caught in a terrifying web of his own making, or the sensual, intoxicating allure of Filter, where he explicitly challenged the world to pick their favorite version of him, completely acknowledging his terrifying power to manipulate his own identity and the public's perception. We all collectively held our breath when he became the very first South Korean soloist in history to violently shatter the Billboard Hot 100, debuting at the absolute #1 spot with Light Crazy, a dark synth-pop masterpiece born from his own deep, agonizing reflections on losing himself in the intoxicating, blinding lights of unprecedented global fame. But what the world fundamentally failed to anticipate was how he would aggressively weaponize this agonizing vulnerability upon his return from his grueling military service. Fast forward to 2026, and Jimin has completely transcended the restrictive, suffocating label of a pop star. He has miraculously metamorphosed into the absolute, undisputed muse of the global high art, luxury, and contemporary dance worlds. He doesn't just attend Fashion Week, he dictates the entire seasonal aesthetic of the planet. As the ultimate, unparalleled global ambassador for monolithic luxury houses like Dior and Tiffany & Company, he hasn't merely modeled their clothes, he has actively forced these historic, rigid European institutions to completely abandon their archaic gender binaries. The Jimin effect in 2026 has violently birthed a massive multi-billion-dollar genderless fashion and jewelry revolution, where men around the entire globe are confidently wearing delicate pearls, sheer lace, and structured corsets, simply because Park Jimin proved that true, lethal masculinity is intrinsically tied to profound vulnerability and fluid, unapologetic grace. But his terrifyingly beautiful 2026 domination extends far beyond the shallow realms of high fashion. He has aggressively reclaimed his contemporary dance roots, completely bypassing the traditional algorithm-chasing music video format to release breathtaking, highly conceptual, feature-length contemporary dance films that debut at prestigious avant-garde film festivals across Europe. These cinematic masterpieces feature him
moving with a terrifying, liquid precision, his body contorting and leaping with a fragile yet explosive power that leaves veteran ballet choreographers and modern dance critics weeping in absolute stunned disbelief. He has completely revolutionized the way physical trauma and emotional healing are visually translated on screen. Furthermore, let us plunge deeply into the immense, staggering philanthropic and educational empire he has silently built in the shadows. He distinctly remembers the desperate, hungry days in Busan when his own family struggled to support his artistic dreams, and in 2026 he has weaponized his colossal wealth to completely eradicate that barrier for the next generation. He secretly established a massive, heavily endowed global foundation that provides full-ride scholarships, elite training facilities, and crucial mental health resources to fiercely talented but economically disadvantaged contemporary dancers and classical musicians across South Korea and the world. He is the brilliant, untouchable patron of the arts who quietly donates billions of won to entirely replace the decaying desks and instruments in rural schools, yet he demands absolute, strict anonymity, only ever being discovered when desperate school administrators leaked their tearful gratitude to the press. The duality of his existence is utterly intoxicating and deeply, profoundly heartbreaking. He is the terrifyingly powerful global icon who can casually crash the servers of international luxury brands with a single blurry late-night Instagram post, and yet he is the exact same deeply sensitive, overwhelmingly empathetic soul who famously fell to his knees sobbing uncontrollably on a massive stadium stage because the sheer unconditional love radiating from the audience physically overwhelmed his fragile heart. In 2026, he has fully mastered the terrifying alchemy of turning his deepest, darkest insecurities into an impenetrable diamond-hard armor of global influence. His unique, androgynous, fiercely crystalline vocal tone, once heavily criticized by conservative vocal coaches for being too unconventional, is now literally being rigorously studied in elite university musicology departments as a distinct, revolutionary instrument of modern pop history. When Park Jimin steps onto a global stage or a Parisian runway in 2026, the entire planet holds its collective breath, completely hypnotized by a man who moves with the terrifying, delicate grace of a falling cherry blossom, but hits the cultural landscape with the devastating, undeniable force of a nuclear bomb. He has completely rewritten the global standard of beauty, proving that vulnerability is the ultimate, most lethal weapon a human being can possess. He is the ethereal muse, the sovereign of modern elegance, and the indisputable, beating, emotional heart of a generation desperate for authentic, unfiltered beauty. How does one fragile human being bear the immense, crushing weight of being the world's ultimate aesthetic obsession while managing to fundamentally rewrite the rules of global philanthropy and art? This is the breathtaking, undeniable miracle of Jimin. But brace yourselves, hold on to everything you know about the music industry, because if Jimin has conquered the realms of high art, luxury, and ethereal beauty, who is left to completely annihilate the traditional boundaries of global pop superstardom, violently shattering every single chart record in human existence, and morphing into the ultimate, unstoppable apex predator of the modern entertainment industry? You are absolutely not ready for the sheer, unadulterated carnage the final member has unleashed on the 2026 global grid.
Number 1. Jungkook, the apex predator of global pop culture. Have you ever completely lost your breath watching a singular human being absolutely obliterate every conceivable metric, record, and boundary known to the history of modern entertainment, morphing from a shy, terrified 15-year-old boy into the undisputed, untouchable titan of the global music industry?
What happens when you take the raw, unadulterated potential of a child prodigy, isolate him in a hyper-competitive, grueling training system, and have him raised, nurtured, and fiercely protected by 6 extraordinary visionaries, only to watch him violently surpass every single expectation placed upon his heavily tattooed shoulders? Are you genuinely prepared to witness the blinding, terrifying zenith of human pop cultural evolution? Let us violently shatter the comfortable, nostalgic illusion of the golden maknae, because the breathtaking, terrifyingly dominant reality of Jungkook in 2026 is no longer just about being the youngest member of a legendary boy band. It is about his absolute, monopolistic, and ruthless conquest of the entire global entertainment grid. To truly and deeply comprehend the staggering, astronomical magnitude of his current reign, we absolutely must travel back to the gritty, unforgiving streets of Seoul, where a painfully introverted, wide-eyed kid arrived with an oversized backpack and an overwhelming, suffocating fear of the unknown. Do you remember the agonizing, heartbreaking stories of him secretly crying alone in the cramped dorm showers because he missed his mother? Or how he would painfully wait until all 6 of his older brothers had fallen asleep before he dared to creep out and wash his own clothes? He was so cripplingly shy that he would literally freeze when asked to sing. Yet beneath that fragile, trembling exterior beat the heart of a ravenous, unstoppable apex predator. The industry carelessly slapped the title Golden on him, entirely oblivious to the crushing, suffocating psychological weight that single word carried. He wasn't just expected to be good, he was violently demanded to be absolutely flawless at everything: singing, dancing, rapping, producing, filming, and athletics. And the truly terrifying, mind-bending reality? He actually was. But he didn't achieve this through sheer luck. He forged his perfection in the fires of agonizing, relentless self-torture. We all vividly remember the sheer, unadulterated cultural reset that was his official solo debut with Seven. The entire global music industry fundamentally underestimated him, foolishly categorizing it as just another pop release, only to watch an absolute paralyzed horror as he violently shattered the Spotify streaming records, surpassing 1 billion streams faster than any human being in recorded history. He completely hijacked the global radio waves, performing a flawless, gravity-defying choreography in the torrential rain on Good Morning America, his crystal-clear, razor-sharp live vocals effortlessly piercing through the storm, proving that he didn't need a studio to sound like a god. We witnessed the awe-inspiring, historic spectacle of him standing alone on the colossal stage of the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar, commanding the attention of billions of viewers worldwide with Dreamers, an unprecedented feat that solidified his status as a global ambassador of monumental proportions. But what was truly brewing inside his fiercely competitive perfectionist mind during his rigorous, grueling mandatory military service in the grueling 5th Infantry Division, where he served bravely on the harsh front lines? While the global public merely counted the days until his return, agonizing over blurry photos and fleeting updates, Jungkook was quietly, methodically shedding the final lingering remnants of his boyish innocence, forging an impenetrable, unbreakable physical and psychological armor. Fast forward to the terrifying, magnificent reality of 2026. Jungkook has completely and ruthlessly dismantled the archaic, Western-dominated hierarchy of global pop superstardom. He is no longer walking in the footsteps of legends like Michael Jackson or Justin Timberlake. He has aggressively paved over their roads and built a multi-billion-dollar superhighway of his own design. Let us dive intensely into the sheer, devastating scale of his 2026 live performance dominance. We are not just talking about massive stadium tours. We are talking about an unprecedented global cinematic event. He is single-handedly selling out multi-night residencies at the most colossal, intimidating venues on the planet: Wembley, SoFi, the Maracanã, within literal milliseconds,
crashing ticketing monopolies and violently triggering international economic microbooms in every single host city. His solo stage in 2026 is a terrifying, breathtaking masterclass in absolute human perfection. He will ruthlessly execute a relentless, bone-crushing 2-hour hip-hop and contemporary choreography, dripping in sweat, practically defying the known laws of physics with his footwork, and simultaneously deliver jaw-dropping, angelic vocal acrobatic runs that leave veteran, classically trained vocal coaches weeping in stunned, absolute disbelief. He has entirely eliminated the need for backing tracks, violently challenging the entire lazy, lip-syncing modern pop industry to step up or step completely out of his way. But the terrifying genius of his 2026 empire extends far beyond his godlike physical capabilities on stage. He has entirely weaponized his legendary, hyper-obsessive passion for cinematography, completely evolving his beloved, intimate Golden Closet films into a massive, heavily funded Hollywood-tier production and directing syndicate. He is no longer just starring in his own multi-million-dollar blockbuster music videos. He is writing, directing, and editing them with the ruthless, visionary precision of an Oscar-winning auteur. He is aggressively pushing the absolute boundaries of visual storytelling, seamlessly blending intense, gritty, cinematic cyberpunk aesthetics with raw, bleeding, emotional vulnerability. Furthermore, let us plunge deeply into the profound, intoxicating duality that completely paralyzes his billions of followers. How does a man who currently holds the terrifying title of the ultimate global sex symbol, casually causing international stock markets to visibly fluctuate with a single devastating Calvin Klein campaign, where his heavily inked, muscular physique violently shatters the internet, manage to remain the exact same deeply humble, fiercely loyal, profoundly sensitive soul? The answer lies in his absolutely unbreakable sacred bond with his fans and his 6 brothers. In 2026, despite being the most heavily guarded, sought-after, incredibly wealthy celebrity on the face of the earth, he fundamentally refuses to abandon his raw, unfiltered humanity. He is the untouchable billionaire pop titan who will still randomly go live on Weavers at 4 a.m., sitting on his couch with messy hair, holding a cheap microphone and singing his absolute heart out for 4 straight hours simply because he missed the people who built him. He cries real, heavy, devastated tears when he reads a touching comment, fundamentally ignoring the frantic, terrified screams of his PR team, who desperately want to maintain a polished, untouchable, godlike facade. He completely rejects the isolating, toxic pedestal of global superstardom, aggressively choosing to remain grounded in his agonizingly beautiful, messy, authentic humanity. His entire right arm, a massive, intricate sleeve of tattoos, is a literal permanent diary of his pain, his love, his profound triumphs, and his eternal devotion to BTS and ARMY, a violently public rejection of the conservative, heavily sanitized Korean idol standards that once tried to suffocate him. He famously tattooed the word ARMY across his knuckles before anyone else dared to permanently ink their skin, effectively declaring that his very hands, the instruments of his global conquest, forever belonged to the people who believed in the terrified 15-year-old boy from Busan. When Jungkook stands at the absolute pinnacle of the world in 2026, gripping a custom microphone, looking out over an endless, deafening ocean of purple light, he isn't just a singer closing a show. He is the terrifying, beautiful, unstoppable culmination of a decade of literal blood, agonizing sweat, and devastating tears. He is the living, breathing masterpiece meticulously sculpted by the genius of RM, the luxury of V, the architectural mind of Suga, the traditional power of Jin, the kinetic force of Hope, and the ethereal beauty of Jimin. He absorbed every single ounce of their brilliance, mixed it with his own ravenous, unparalleled ambition, and violently exploded into the ultimate, indestructible apex predator of global pop culture. He has utterly conquered the charts, the stages, the screens, and the cultural zeitgeist, definitively proving that when you push a golden child through the darkest, most terrifying fires of the global industry, he doesn't just survive, he completely, ruthlessly, and beautifully burns the entire system to the ground and builds a new world in his own image. This is the staggering, undeniable reality of 2026, and the world has absolutely no choice but to bow down to the seven kings who fundamentally refuse to be ordinary.